Very rarely are there legit haymakers in an NBA game that ends this thing 4 minutes into a contest. Very rarely. We saw that tonight. Rockets dominate, blow out the Golden State Warriors 131-116 in a game that was not as close as the final score made it appear. Let's break it down as the Warriors head back to the Bay Area for a Game 6.
You are Locked On Warriors.
Stop trying to turn the page on us so fast.
Your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
We got 4 championships.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Every team has a chance if Steph's on the team.
Your team every day.
What's good, everyone? Welcome to the Locked On Warriors. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game 6 coming up, and there's no better way to enjoy Game 6 than with Gametime in the Bay Area. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Maybe some Game 6 tickets. My name's Charlie Walter, formerly at 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. That's the flagship station for your Golden State Warriors. Also cover the team for CBS News Bay Area. Matt Kolsky, my co-host tonight, he joined me at 95.7 The Game. Locked On Warriors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can check out the show on YouTube, wherever you get your audio podcast. Make sure you follow along to the program. And, follow along as this series continues. And unfortunately, tonight's game was one that if you had a lot of chores to get done, you probably could have gotten those chores done. One that if you got off work around 5 o'clock Pacific, you left the cubicle and you pulled up your phone, you may have not wanted to watch the game. In fact, Mike Loganoff, who joins me on this show from time to time, Kolsky, he texted me before the game and he said, I'm going to be about 3 hours late watching this game. No spoilers. Do I text him right now and say, don't bother, brother? Or do I let him suffer through it like the rest of us?
Oh, I think you gotta wait.
He's got to see Braxton Key minutes and the Moses Moody emergence.
I think if he calls you or texts you and is like, bro, I am in the beginning of the second quarter, they're down 25, and Guy Santos and Kevon Looney are in the game without Jimmy Butler or Steph Curry. Do I need to watch the rest of this? Then you have that conversation. That sucked, though. And
wasn't fun. You know what it was, Kolsky? It was Memphis Game 5 when they beat the Warriors 134-95. Final score today, 131-116. So I guess a little closer tonight than it was. But it was the same exact feeling to go back Game 6. And remember, we felt like that Game 6 against the Grizzlies was a must-win. Maybe not as much this time around. But you got to win Game 6, man. You do not want to give this young Rockets team confidence. They were playing confident tonight. They were hitting shots tonight, and they were the much better team.
Yeah, to me, it's not even about the must-win thing. I mean, listen, if it went to Game 7, I would pick the Warriors because it's hard for me to imagine Steph Curry losing a Game 7 to a team whose best closer is, Fred VanVleet? So it's not about that to me. It's about every minute you spend on the floor with the Rockets. And listen, there's already some complaints about the refs in the chat. I'm not going to tell you the refs were good tonight, but the difference in this game was that one team arrived on time to play basketball and the other did not. So you can't complain about the refs when your starters no-show. And the coach no-showed as well, as Empire in the chat is pointing out right now. Curry and Butler were out of the game for an extended period between the first and second quarter, and it was like 5 straight minutes where the Warriors didn't score. And look, you're going to look at this and say, man, look at the Rockets' offensive output. The Warriors must have been terrible defensively. And, they weren't good, but
you had Dylan Brooks hitting turnaround threes. I mean, come on.
Yeah, okay, but this game went downhill for them defensively because they were just completely lifeless on offense. They were not getting shots for like a 5-minute stretch in the first half, just turning it over, bad passes, bad dribbling, not making the right play out of double teams. It was pathetic basketball and embarrassing, frankly, for a team that is supposed to be winning on veteran presence and experience and like intensity and toughness. And none of those things showed up to the game tonight. Not any of them. It was a weak effort, poor execution. And, you know, we can say, hey, this game wasn't that big. You know, they sort of put themselves in a situation by looking at it like, hey, we can always win in game 6 at home.
They had to go home anyway.
Yeah, but every minute you spend on the floor with the Rockets is a risk to your best players. And none of this matters if your best players have even a small injury, because nobody believes this team can do anything without Jimmy and Steph at full strength. And guess what? Jimmy's already not at full strength. So what would have been better? Having a week, maybe more, off before you start the next round, or making Jimmy Butler play in another high-intensity game or two and then have maybe a day, maybe 2 off before you start the second round. Like, it's just...
Yeah, I mean,
it's a terrible outcome. And I know people are going to say it's not, but it's terrible.
It was over 4 minutes in. I mean, Rockets went on a 15-0 run to blow it open at 20-8. And I even wrote this down. I was writing down the notes as I went along, and I said, there's not haymakers in the NBA 4 minutes in. In college, sure, but NBA teams settle in, they make their runs. There's never games involving good teams typically, unless you're looking at like the Warriors in Memphis and the Warriors in Boston earlier in the year, and some of those just complete duds that the Warriors are due for, you know, once in a 7-game series, it would seem. So, but it was Houston, man, protecting the basketball. They got to the line. They got to the free throw line 8 times early. They were hitting tough shots. Van Vliet was on. Dylan Brooks was on early. Who else was on? I mean,
they all look good. They shot like 65% from the field for 3 quarters.
70% in the first half.
Yeah.
Close to 70%.
It was, they were great. And look, maybe you have a much better effort tonight and still don't win because the Rockets did play well. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, although they can't get through a game without embarrassing themselves mentally and emotionally, because having arguably your best players starting fights with Pat Spencer in a blowout is just it's very Rockets. We'll say that.
It's like that's like Steph Curry after a win going and trying to find Nate Williams, you know, after he's been on the bench cooling off and has to go back in because the Warriors subs have brought it to the point where the Rockets are starting to get a little tense. And then after a bucket, Steph Curry goes after Nate Williams, gets in his face. Like, what are you doing, Shingun? I've been giving him credit. I think he's the best player on the Rockets. I think he's nice.
He's tough. He's really good, but that's just and look, I think this is the sort of stuff that happens when you make Dylan Brooks the emotional leader of your team, but it's not a good look, man. Like, all 5 guys on the floor for the Warriors at that point could be suspended, and it would not have a big effect on Steve Kerr's rotation on a normal night. And all your starters are out there starting fights. And like, I don't know.
It was an ass kicking, man. It's as simple as that.
And if you're Sengun in that situation, like, why even get involved? Even if you think Pat Spencer pushed Dylan Brooks, which, you know, he kind of did. Like, you got to be smarter and better than that in that situation. And I don't know. I just thought this game, with the exception of Moses Moody and you know, I guess Braxton Key, everybody kind of embarrassed themselves tonight.
We'll get into the whole bench unit and what they were able to do, making this at least a entertaining few minutes, because outside of those few minutes of the bench mob, there was legit nothing to take away from this game that was exciting. In fact, the Warriors starters left the game with 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. So they didn't play 18 minutes of the second half. They sat the bench. They got a little bit of rest. Steph Curry did put on the ankle brace late in the game, thinking that he could potentially go back in. Warriors got it down to 13. Pat Spencer had a corner 3 to pull it within 10. Then Braxton Key missed a layup that would have got it within 11 on that same possession. Both times weren't able to get that bucket, and that's what led to the scrum, and we'll bring that up some more. But it was Curry who had 13 points in the game, nothing in the first quarter. Neither Curry or Butler had anything in a first quarter that saw Houston score 40 and Golden State just 24. Houston turned it up in the second quarter too, scoring 36 to Golden State's 25. Draymond only played 18 minutes. You got really nothing from Buddy Hield. Pods didn't play enough to give you contributions. It was pretty much just a beat down by the time the fans got their popcorn. By the time they got their brisket nachos at Toyota Center, they sat down, getting ready to take their first bite, looked at the Jumbotron and saw that it was 20-7 or whatever it was. And the Warriors were truly never able to recover. Not a thing of beauty by any means. The good news is it's an early game. You got the rest of your day to not think about that ever again. Burn the tape, everyone. Burn the tape and move on. You had a couple game advantage. So now you have 2 chances to win one more game with game 6 being in the Bay Area. And this does feel a lot like that Memphis series. So we're hoping that history repeats itself and that game 6 is an electric finish where the Warriors just dominate the glass like they did in 2022. I doubt that's going to happen. But let's talk about the moment that Moses Moody had, that the bench warmers had, bringing the Warriors back into it to the point that Steph Curry was truly thinking about going in there. That's coming up on Locked On Dubs.
And buddy, stop trying to dribble the ball.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena and will be in Game 6 at Chase. And with Gametime, you could be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. Why I use Gametime? I just told you, 60% last-minute deals. You can procrastinate. All-in-one pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. I love it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed.
And buddy, stop trying to dribble the ball.
All right, the box score from today looks as such. Draymond had 7, Jimmy Butler at 8, 13 for Steph Curry, 4 for Buddy Hield, 8 for Brandon Pajemski, 2 for Kevon Looney, 14 for Kevin Knox. Braxton Key didn't score a point, but had 7 rebounds. And honestly, watching him in this game, it was like, hey, he may fit in this series. Trace Jackson Davis looked good. 4 points and 5 rebounds in his limited minutes. Guy Santos had 7, Post had 5, 8 for Peyton, 25 to lead the way for Moses Moody, much of which during a stretch that we're about to talk about. Pat Spencer had 11. On the Houston Rockets side, they shot at 55% from the floor, 43% from 3, and a team that sucks at free throws went 32 of 38 from the line. Give them a pat on the back. They all played really well. Amin Thompson, who, can't shoot the ball great by any means, although he did knock down a deep one today. Yeah. He was 8 of 12 from the floor, had 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 5 steals, all in the first half, 3 blocks, 25 points. I said literally 24 hours ago, I don't know if I see superstardom in him. You saw glimpses today. I will tell you that much. Dylan Brooks had 24 on 7 of 13 shooting, 15 for Şengün. Van Vliet had 26 points on 4 of 6 from 3. Notice these numbers, 11 for Jalen Green, and then we'll forget about the Rockets bench. Nobody cares on this program. I tell you that much. Let's get into the run that the Warriors had. Down, 26, 27 points midway through the third quarter. Steve Kerr decides to pull the plug. He takes the starters out. The bench unit comes in, led by Moses Moody and some size. Like Kevin Knox and Braxton Key, you could tell we're affecting the game a little bit. And Trace Jackson Davis, too, on the floor at the same time with their size out there, to the point where the Rockets had to bring their starters back in the game to finish off the Warriors. The Dubs almost got it within single digits. Steph Curry put the brace back on, potentially getting ready to go back in. What'd you think with 6 minutes left in the Warriors within one possession of a 10-point game, not deciding in an elimination game to go with their starters after pulling it within 13? Your thoughts there?
I think that if I am Joe Lacob and Steve Kerr put Steph Curry back in that game, I'm firing him after the game. Because, after the way he coached that thing, the way they all came out in the third quarter looking like they were ready to sit for the night after 5 minutes, like that is just begging for some kind of injury. The best player in your franchise's history probably has been, basically icing it up for half an hour, 40 minutes of real time. And he's asking for his ankle braces back. You're going to put him on the floor to be down double digits. Oh man, come on. That would have been ridiculous. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
Can we, before we get into Moody,
3, that's a different conversation. But 13, I'm not even beginning to
if they pulled it within 8, you wouldn't have thought about putting the starters in a game that you could have just finished off the series, gone home and slept.
I would have thought about keeping some of the starters in the first and second quarter to try to get back in the game is what I would have thought about. In all seriousness,
yeah, they didn't have it tonight, man. There are games that teams just come out flat. I mean, again, we saw
but Chuck,
we saw a championship team do it in 21-22. The Warriors literally had the same performance against Memphis. It's how you respond. Let's see what they do in game 6. I'm not going to get too pissed off.
But honestly, you're right that they got killed in Memphis. But to say that, at down 14 at the end of the first, it was over, which is basically the way Steve Kerr coached the game. I don't know, man. That ignores an awful lot of comebacks, not just across the NBA in general, but from this very team this year. How many games did they start like trash and then win over the course of this season? So I just thought it was a weird flat opening, like you've said. It was certainly a night where guys, I mean, Jimmy Butler, you could say didn't have it, but he didn't look any better at the start of game 4. And he just kind of kept grinding himself into a really good game. Steph Curry had moments tonight where it looked like he was really feeling it. He hit a couple of tough shots. There was a little run. I'm not saying they were likely to win this game. The Rockets, again, they were great. It's on their home floor, backs against the wall, all that stuff. But just
Kolsky, this game was over. This game was over as they walked off the bus with the approach.
That is giving them such a pass, man. And I
dude, they didn't have it. They came out flat, and you see it all the time in the NBA. They did not have it, and you could tell early that they weren't going to figure it out.
They came out flat easily 50 times this year, and they do not have 50 losses. So I reject that as in a playoff game against the team that, yes, was scoring great, but traditionally throughout this season and this series can't score that much. It's
when the other teams get to the line nonstop, hitting free throws and hitting desperation threes. I mean, we legit saw Dylan Brooks turnaround threes in this game. Van Vliet couldn't miss. No one could miss. Everything was going down. Even the tough shots, even the times they did play good defense, you couldn't do anything about it. At a point, emotionally, the human inside of you as an athlete, you just, at a certain point, it's on to game 6, man.
But that point should be in the middle of the third quarter when you actually bench all the starters, not sometime in the middle of the first half. And it
felt like they were down 30 points in the middle of the first half. At that point, what are we doing? You want to fight to the finish, Kolsky. Down 30.
No, I want to show up for work in the playoffs. And I want to give my best guys the best opportunity to do that throughout the game. And I don't feel like that happened tonight. I feel like Steve Kerr and to an extent the players approach this game like a team that was ready for game 6.
Yeah.
And I think I still think they win the series, to be clear, right? I think they're the better team. I think they're probably going to win the series. But this sort of flatness, even though there's the Memphis game to refer to, this sort of flatness and just weird lack of answers from anybody does not give you a lot of encouragement for the rest of this run.
I feel fine, honestly.
Okay.
Even keel, baby. Don't get too far ahead of your skis. It's a game. They
Even-
played like
even-
crap. How many
even
times did we
keel
see
truck,
this
man.
year from the Warriors? We
Not
see
a
it all
lot
the
after
time,
Jimmy
man.
got here. Not a lot. And if this is the team from before Jimmy, then what are we doing?
Didn't we see it against the Spurs? Wasn't Jimmy playing in that game against the Spurs? I mean, this team is due for duds. Like in a 7-game series, they are due for a dud. And you could say they had that dud in game 2. But tonight was the true dud of all duds. Not a dud. In fact, probably one of the most entertaining parts of this game was Braxton Key, who went to Virginia, clearly. I don't even have to look it up. I know he went to Virginia because he was 0-7 from the floor, couldn't make a damn layup, had 7 rebounds. I was like, oh my God, who is that? I look him up, Braxton Key. I've been hearing the name for a while. He is he's a ball of energy, man. I mean, he had a little impact out there. Unfortunately, he couldn't put the ball in the hoop.
Yeah. The rest of the team should be embarrassed that it took Braxton Key to show appropriate playoff intensity. I mean, he did.
Amen.
And if he could make a layup, you would think about playing him more, but he couldn't. He really couldn't make a layup. And that's a problem that I don't really want to mess around with in a game 6. If you know, that said, like,
how about Knox and
good for
Moody
him.
putting up like 30 shots in 5 minutes? I mean, it was the Knox and Moody show. They were just firing up. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
Moody needed some confidence because he's been a little tight these
If
past
there's
few
one
weeks.
positive tonight, it's
Yes.
that Moses Moody got real run and seemed to start to get his offensive game going. Because if we learned anything from this game, it's that, boy, another offensive option would sure be helpful, because there are so many lineups we're seeing out there where there's only 1 or 2 guys that you have any faith in putting the ball in the basket.
No doubt about it. All right, we'll continue the show in just a minute. We'll tie a ribbon on this game, get you ready for game 6, and got to break down the altercation that left Pat Spencer hitting the showers early. Pat Spencer ejected in a game 5? What the hell is going on in here? We'll tell you about it coming up.
And buddy, stop trying to dribble the ball.
All right, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at, and I realize I've played that buddy bite a little too much. He didn't dribble too much tonight, but it's brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console is required, everyone. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6. It's as easy as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. How about that? So head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st Gen and 2nd Gen, and the Fire TV Cube 3rd generation. Let's get back to the show. Altercation took place late in this contest. It was when the Warriors had pulled this thing within 13. Pat Spencer had an open corner 3 to make it 10. He missed it. Key got a rebound, missed the layup. Trace Jackson Davis, I do want to get into his play in just a second because he looked like he could, provide a little bit of a spark potentially at some point in this series with the way that he was able to guard Şengün in the 4 or 5 possessions that he was on him, although he did foul him once. But in terms of what happened after that Braxton Key missed rebound, missed layup that leads to a loose ball, goes out of bounds. Somehow Dylan Brooks is kind of just falling over in the play, turns around and immediately just wants to bang heads with someone. And I'm like, dude, it's a 16-point game. Spencer and Key and Knox are on. Like, what are you doing? Just relax. No one pushed you. It's not that big of a deal. Chill out, buddy. And refs or whoever it was, maybe a Rockets player, they stop Dylan Brooks and they avoid that potential catastrophe. But a half second later, it's Alperen Şengün getting in Pat Spencer's face for no reason. Just Spencer's walking. He's got his head down, bumps his shoulder, and Spencer, in true lacrosse-like fashion, headbutts him. Got ejected for the headbutt. Trace Jackson Davis went Dale Davis. I mean, they had to hold him back. He was pissed. He's like, really? Dude, that's Pat Spencer. Really, man? Like, come on now. You're better than that, Şengün. You want to be one of the faces of this league someday? You don't go after Pat frickin' Spencer. I want your thoughts on that altercation, even more so than you delved into earlier.
My first thought is that Alperen Sengun is not in any danger of becoming the face of the league, but he is awfully good, and he's awfully important to Houston. And boy, would the Warriors giggle if he got himself into trouble by starting something with Pat Spencer. Like, it's just so silly. And again, Dylan Brooks sets the tone there by starting to go after Pat Spencer. And like, nothing to me is more obvious that Dylan Brooks is a fraud and a bum than the dichotomy between him doing that over the top, pretending to laugh thing with Jimmy Butler. Like he is like Jimmy Butler shouldn't dare talk to him like that. But then losing his temper with Pat Spencer in a game that he never should have even been playing in at that point. He is like, I almost feel bad for the guy. And
he's quite the antagonist.
He had a good game tonight, and congratulations to him, and his team won, but just he can't even get through that without idiocy. There's no other way to describe that. Pat Spencer knocked you over. Okay. That's when you should be laughing at somebody, when you're beating the hell out of the other team that's beating you in the series, and a G leaguer knocks you down. Stand up, laugh, shoot your free throws. To try to start stuff is so goofy. Just as a fan, I can't respect a guy like that.
Dude, I went down a Reddit rabbit hole the other day. No idea if it's true or not. But apparently some of the reporters that have covered him in Memphis, Houston, whatever, it's all a shtick. And he's actually like a normal.
They say he's lovely off the floor.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about. I mean, he seems like such a jackass.
That may be true. I have no reason not to believe that. He might be a lovely person in real life, but this is basketball, and on the basketball
at the local animal shelter, yeah,
on the basketball floor, he's an absolute jackass. There's no other way to say it. Like he is committed to on-court jackassery, and I guess, honestly, I get it more from a Dylan Brooks than from like some better players who behave that way. That's why he is in the league, is because he's willing to play on the edge all the time. But that doesn't mean the Warriors shouldn't crush this team, and in a 7-game series, a good team like Houston is gonna find ways to win a game or two, but it should never look like it did tonight. It just shouldn't. And even if it means they win in 6 instead of 5 or 7 instead of 6, like even if that's the only result, it still diminishes my faith that this team can make any real noise as the playoffs continue.
A few things that I want to get to from the notes that I was taking during the game. Amon Thompson had a sequence where he picked Curry's pocket, slammed it with Jimmy fouling him. That was super impressive. I mentioned he had 5 steals before halftime. He was excellent today. I mentioned the Rockets hit close to 70% in the first half, 13 of 13 from free throws in the first quarter, and did want to bring up the zone, because the Rockets ran a zone, looked like a matchup zone of some sort, and the Dubs shot 18 threes in the first 13 minutes of the game. So by the end of the first quarter, they'd shot 17 threes or something along those lines, and then hoisted up another 1 seconds into the second quarter. That's not going to cut it, man. That's not going to cut it, especially when Curry's not hitting a single one in the first.
Yeah, and that's been one of their biggest issues all year long, right? Is on those nights where the 3 is not falling early, they really struggle to find a different approach. And so it's kind of just, well, we're going to keep jacking and see if they start falling. And to me, like, there are other opportunities there. Even though you're not the more athletic team, you are smart enough basketball players to attack a zone with some discipline, and just none of that was there tonight. None of it. It's the Warriors' whole thing is supposed to be outsmarting other teams at this point, right? They looked dumb tonight.
They were baited, and the Rockets knew exactly what they were doing. They baited them into it. They didn't let Jimmy get downhill early and impose anything on them. Steph missed a couple threes, and
that was Rockets basketball. The game was perfectly catered to what the Rockets can do. They got to run up and down the floor almost the whole night. Yes, there were some miracle shots tonight. They shot some. I mean, you've mentioned the Dylan Brooks turnaround three.
When the Rockets shoot like that, man. When the Rockets shoot like that, you're not beating them.
Yeah, but that happens, in my view, because the Warriors let them get out and run and score at will on easy stuff early. That's when a team like this usually starts to shoot the lights out, is when you let them get running ahead of you. And look, in the open floor, the Rockets are probably going to kill the Warriors. You know, the Warriors are usually a good transition team, but they are just so overmatched athletically in this series. It's really the one significant disadvantage roster-wise that I see, and they played right into the Rockets' hands tonight.
Yeah, and you shot 18 threes in the first 12 minutes. You know what happens when you shoot threes? Ball's tipped out, long miss, whatever, plays right into the Rockets' hands. They run the other way. They get transition threes, which we saw plenty. I saw like Fred hit 3 of those in the first 7 minutes of the game. And they didn't even need a monster night from Şengün. They didn't even need the lineup with Steven Adams out there to get a whole bunch of rebounds. In fact, I didn't even notice the rebounding differential. It was actually the Warriors that won on the glass 49-39. So go figure. The Warriors win by 10 and they get spanked in the game.
I'm checking now because I bet in the first half it wasn't so good for the Warriors.
No, second half, like I am not lying to you. If you didn't watch the game, if you just turned it off and you're listening to the podcast and you're like, what happened down the stretch? The lineup out there with Knox, Trace Jackson Davis, Braxton Key, Pat Spencer, and Moses Moody was legit. Like all of a sudden the size of Houston didn't look like that big of a deal.
It just played hard, right?
They played hard, and they're all like Knox is 6'8", Braxton Keys 6'8", Trace Jackson Davis is 6'9", Moses Moody has a 7'1" wingspan, which is absurd, by the way.
You said earlier
it was that big. I thought it was 6'10".
If Moody plays like that, this team can do damage, you know, but it needs to be against starters in the first half. You mentioned earlier, just to quickly throw this before we have to go, Trace Jackson Davis, I would give, not that Steve Kerr and I seem to think at all the same, but I would give real consideration to giving him those early Looney minutes in game 6, because Looney just hasn't been able to do much here. And again, he's really good defensively for a guy with slow feet, but the Rockets take advantage of him. And Trace is not the defender Looney is mentally or, you know, strategically, but he's a really good athlete and he does play D. And
he's vertical.
Exactly. He can also give you some verticality on offense. It just, again, they should be able to win game 6 like they won 3 of the first 4, but I would love to see more creative and like strategically sound approaches, generally speaking.
Friday, it's Rockets and Warriors. Dubs try to send the Rockets packing and send them on to the offseason as they look for their big fish that could potentially get them over the top. Or do they force a game 7 and the Warriors have to go back to Houston? That would be devastating. It would be a nightmare. Win game 6. No such thing as a must win unless it's the last game. It's a must win for the Rockets. But in my mind, it's a must win. Just win the damn game.
It's an auto win. You ought to win.
Warriors fans, put on your gold shirts, damn it. Come on, put on the gold shirts. Come on.
Have a gold out, get a win, get a couple extra days, hopefully, to rest. And for those of you about to say goodbye to us, turn that game on and root for the Lakers. I know it's going to feel weird, but whatever happens in that series, you want it to be longer. You do not want Minnesota to be resting and sitting around waiting for whoever comes out of this series.
You do not. Locked On Warriors, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. On to Friday. Burn the tape.
On to Cincinnati.